The Names of Gollum. Gollum. In Chapter 5 of The Hobbit, Riddles in the Dark, Bilbo is wandering alone underground. The narration gives us some exposition about the cave system, then introduces a new character with these words.
Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum, a small slimy creature. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was.
A few paragraphs later, Gollum surprises Bilbo. He abandons his usual MO of surprise and strangle, giving Bilbo time to draw his elven blade and don his plot armour.
Suddenly up came Gollum, and whispered and hissed,
"Bless us and splash us, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast. At least a tasty morsel it'd make us, Gollum."
And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name.
In The Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Past, Gandalf describes Gollum's origins. During this tale, he says, "He only wept and called us cruel, with many a Gollum in his throat." In both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, there are many instances of Gollum using this as an exclamation. In the editions I use for reference, this is consistently italicized in The Lord of the Rings, but not in The Hobbit. Here's an example from The Lord of the Rings, Book 4, Chapter 1, The Taming of Sméagol. "But that would kill us,
whimpered Gollum.
Cruel little hobbitses. Tie us up in the cold, hard lands and leave us."
Sobs welled up in his gobbling throat.
I imagine the word Tolkien spells identically to Gollum's name is meant to represent the sound which people who heard him adapted into the more pronounceable Gollum. My precious. When Gollum surprises Bilbo, The Hobbit reads, "At least a tasty morsel it'd make us."
And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious.
Here The Hobbit says that Gollum calls himself my precious, but in the prologue to The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien writes,
"He possessed a secret treasure that had come to him long ages ago, when he still lived in the light. A ring of gold that made its wearer invisible. It was the one thing he loved, his precious, and he talked to it even when it was not with him."
My reading of The Lord of the Rings is that when Gollum says my precious, he means the ring, consistent with what Tolkien writes in the prologue. This seems to me one of the many inconsistencies between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. An argument could conceivably be made that when Gollum's two personalities talk to each other in The Lord of the Rings, one addresses the other as my precious. An example can perhaps be found in Book 4, Chapter 2, The Passage of the Marshes. One personality says, "But Sméagol said he would be very, very good. Nice hobbit. He took cruel rope off Sméagol's leg. He speaks nicely to me." The other replies, "Very, very good, my precious. Let's be good. Good as fish, sweet one, but to ourselves." It's obvious to me that when Gollum says sweet one, he's addressing himself, or one personality is addressing the other. Can we infer that he means the same by my precious? I feel like that's probably overreaching. During the same conversation, Gollum refers to the ring as the precious, and throughout the novel he uses the phrase my precious at the end of sentences for no obvious reason. Sméagol. In The Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Past, Gandalf tells of Gollum's origins. "The most inquisitive and curious-minded of that family was called Sméagol. He was interested in roots and beginnings. He dived into deep pools. He had a friend called Trahald, of similar sort, sharper-eyed but not so quick and strong." After this tale, Legolas says Sméagol, who is now called Gollum, has escaped. Book 4, Chapter 1 is entitled The Taming of Sméagol. Here Frodo and Samwise catch Gollum and talk to him.
Frodo looked straight into Gollum's eyes, which flinched and twisted away. "You know that?" "Oh, you guess well enough, Sméagol," he said, quietly and sternly. "We are going to Mordor, of course, and you know the way there, I believe."
"Ach!"
said Gollum, covering his ears with his hands, as if such frankness and the open speaking of the names hurt him.
After this, the word Sméagol often occurs in the narration, and Gollum sometimes uses it himself. Trahald. Based on its spelling, you may read the aforementioned name as Sméagol, and so wonder why I pronounce it as Sméagol. As I've discussed previously, in Appendix F Part 2, Tolkien tells us the names he gives characters are translations into English from their real forms. He mentions peculiar local Hobbit words that were of northern origin. They have been given the forms that lost English words might well have had if they had come down to our day. Thus Matham is meant to recall ancient English Martham, and so to represent the relationship of the actual Hobbit cast to Rohirric castu. Sméagol and Trahald are equivalents made up in the same way for the names Trahald, burrowing, worming in, and Nahald, secret, in the northern tongues. I take this to mean that Sméagol and Trahald are in what Tolkien calls Ancient English, which mainstream scholars today usually call Old English. Sméagol is my reconstruction of how this would have been pronounced in Old English, but Sméagol is merely a translation. Gollum's original name in the language of his youth was Trahald. Summary. In summary, Gollum's real name in his mother tongue was Trahald, or possibly Trahald, as Tolkien uses the letter H ambiguously for the sounds and Tolkien translates this name into Old English as Sméagol. Gollum uses the sound as an exclamation, so people started calling him Gollum. In The Hobbit, his name for himself is My Precious, but in The Lord of the Rings, this is his name for the ring.